Ah yes, Japanese role-playing game royalty. Such lovely soundtracks, satisfying combat systems, and unforgettable characters. Today we will be taking a look at the JRPG royal lineage all the way back to the great-grandfather of the genre, Dragon Quest III. But not any old version of the game, oh no. Specifically the HD, 2D, 3D, DDD approved Remake. This is actually my first ever delve into the Dragon Quest games, so I won't be judging it as a remake. Due to my inexperience with the series, there are most likely other videos out there that will do a much better job at that than I could. HD-2D was an art style first introduced with Octopath Traveler, and I won't lie and admit over time I grew tired of seeing it because it felt like there were just so many of them. I mean, hey, Square Enix themselves have expressed concern over this, but now that I've actually played one, I really can't blame them for using this visual style so much. When games made the leap to 3D, they vastly improved on a technical level, but at the same time, it felt like the magic that sprite-based visuals provided was lost. HD-2D finds a solid middle ground between retaining the charm of sprites while also wielding impressive visuals for modern-day standards. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it's refreshing to see a remake go for a style that isn't hyperrealism, not just cause it's all starting to look samey, but because my storage greatly appreciates it. Dragon Quest III takes up only about 15 gigabytes, and if it can look this good while being 10 times smaller than modern games, well, please, by all means, oversaturate the market. The character sprites are very detailed, though in certain instances, I wish they were more expressive for a certain reason I'm gonna come back to later. On the other hand, the work done for the enemies is phenomenal. No complaints here whatsoever. The designs for them all are exceptionally memorable, and they're paired with a multitude of smooth animations as well. The star of the show for the visuals is of course the lighting. Light sources will break through caves, shine through windows, and cast extremely convincing shadows. I don't know the specifics, but take my word for it, it's just really good. In some areas, the player character will even pull out a lantern that's a light source that you yourself get to move around, so you too can experience the joy of illuminating dark areas, as well as dogs. Though to say something negative, there were surprisingly common instances of shadow pop-in, as well as frame rate drops. If this was the Nintendo Switch, I'd say whatever, but I'm the owner of a $200,000 gaming PC, so this resulted in me punching my monitor every time it happened. Ignoring these minor hiccups in the hole in my screen, this is a very pleasing remake to look at. One of the defining features of Dragon Quest III is given to the player right from the start, the ability to create your own party members. There's a pleasant amount of customization down to gender, hair color, voice clips, and most importantly, vocation, which are basically character classes. I went with the recommended picks of mage, priest, and warrior, except I selected the option to make them girls, because I like you girls. What? What, is that so wrong? Fine. Leave your dislike. The vocations you select alter the special abilities your characters learn, and there are a lot of them to mess around with. Getting into battles is done through old school random encounters. This mechanic was originally designed to compensate for weak hardware back in the 1800s, where it would have been tough for the game to display too many enemies roaming in large areas. Fast forward to today, where this is no longer an issue, random encounters are especially looked down upon for being outdated and annoying. I think random encounters add a certain tension that's absent when you can simply walk around difficult enemies, so I wouldn't necessarily call them outdated, but I can confirm that they are, in fact, annoying. The most complex mechanic here are the enemy groups, which is when multiple of the same enemy are positioned next to each other, and you don't have direct control over which one of them you attack. Such a fairly simple mechanic creates a surprisingly interesting gameplay loop, which is made even more interesting once you get your hands on weapons and spells that can hit everything in a group, and some that can even strike down every enemy at once. Awesome. Other than a couple extra variables, that's really all there is to it. There's no timed button presses or skipping turns or anything fancy like that. It's probably one of the most straightforward combat systems in the genre, and yet it's still so fun because of how well put together it all is. Every couple level ups grants your characters new offensive or defensive capabilities, in which itself is always a rewarding feeling. In my dumb baby opinion, solid progression can single-handedly save an otherwise just okay combat system. Kingdom Hearts 1 has very simple battles, but it stays fresh thanks to constantly unlocking new things to play around with. The same applies to Dragon Quest III. You're always gaining access to new abilities, spells, equipment, and stat increasers, and trust me when I say every little ounce of an upgrade you can get matters. At the start of the game, I remember thinking it was pathetically easy, and I really wish I hadn't done that because once I entered the pyramid, I apparently got hit by the Pharaoh's curse. The difficulty shot up so much I thought I accidentally entered the wrong area. Battles become much more challenging and there are consistently gruesome difficulty spikes throughout the game. Enemies have no hesitation to act multiple times per turn, inflict crazy dangerous status effects, and drag out battles with what feels like an endless supply of healing, which most definitely isn't annoying at all. As frustrating as it could be, I ultimately have to respect the decision to keep the normal difficulty a challenge. If people want to play easy mode, it's right there, but don't gut the normal difficulty because you're scared players will drop your game if they aren't winning start to finish. Listen, I love Nintendo to death, but if this was a game made by those guys, it would have taken a measly 2 losses until it asked me if I wanted to lower the difficulty. Meanwhile, the Dragon Quest III remake we got says your feelings don't matter. Your characters will get hit with instant death spells and you just have to deal with it. At one point, I had to defeat a boss to progress, but my party wasn't strong enough to beat it, so I said, oh well, time to go level up and upgrade my stuff. The problem was that there was no dungeon prior to the boss, meaning there were no enemies around my level to provide experience. The only reason I was able to level up efficiently was because of me being the genius that I am, remembered where metal slimes showed up in a previous area, and even that took quite a while. I also had an inconceivable amount of gold I was more than willing to spend, but none of the shops at that point were providing anything that was better than what I had. I sailed and explored the entire world to no avail, and my only remaining option was to equip 3 of my party members with the cat suit. It made for an admittedly amusing moment, but I feel I shouldn't have had to resort to the joke equipment for the best chance of success, and even then, I was barely able to make it through the battle. It all came down to a single turn. Oh my god! As you can tell, I was mildly surprised. There were some instances where I could feel the difficulty let up just a little bit, such as characters' HP and MP being restored after leveling up. Some people really don't like this mechanic, but I personally found running low on MP and debating whether to retreat and give up my progress in the current dungeon, or tough it out and see if I could make it to my next level up, pretty engaging. Also, when you game over, you have the option to choose between the autosave and getting sent back to the nearest town. If you select go back to town, you'll lose half your gold, which is a crazy brutal punishment. Or at least it would be, if it wasn't for the insanely generous autosave. The first time I selected this option, I assumed I'd be sent back multiple levels of the dungeon I was in. Turns out I lost at most 2 minutes of progress. There is zero reason to select go back to town and throw away potentially thousands of gold, when you could instead load the autosave and simply zoom back to Aliahan to heal for a measly 8 gold.
Hot buttered popcorn, that's a deal!
Exploration is another very strong aspect of the game. There are many items not only scattered throughout the overworld, but inside houses as well, which provides more of a reason to actually go inside them. Many medals are collectibles that are exchanged for valuable items, and some of them are tucked away in ridiculously hidden spots. Friendly monsters are hidden all around, and you can recruit them to fight in monster arenas located in a bunch of towns, and rescuing monsters of the same species will give them a boost in combat. When battling, you can't issue them direct commands, which means victory can feel pretty luck dependent at times, but it's worth it to seek out these guys because even the rewards in the beginner arenas can be genuinely helpful. Also, their names can be pretty amusing, not to mention I got this incredible screenshot out of it. Now onto the story. Here's the basic plot of Dragon Quest III. This is Baramos. He's the bad guy. Ortega sets out on a quest to defeat Baramos, but mysteriously goes missing. You play as the child of Ortega and set out on a quest to defeat Baramos, and well, that's pretty much it actually. The basic story honestly isn't anything special, but there are a lot of memorable moments scattered throughout the adventure to make up for it. You temporarily become a king, board a ghost pirate ship, save a town from sacrificing their people to a demon. While playing, I could notice how much of an influence Dragon Quest III had on the genre, searching the world for a number of shiny things to comic relief characters that show up as a recurring enemy. If there's a trope in your favorite JRPG, good or bad, there's an approximate 50% chance it's in this game. From combat to story, everything in Dragon Quest III is so straightforward that no matter what, the player will always know what's going on and what to do. Almost. One of the required items to proceed through the story is found here, where this old guy will tell you he needs a merchant to build a town. What I thought I needed to do was talk to some of the people at the shops from earlier towns. Apparently not. Once again, I explored the entire world thinking I was simply missing something, until I eventually gave up and looked up a guide online. Turns out I was supposed to bring him a merchant party member. I really wish the game was more transparent about this, because after sticking with my existing party for over 20 hours, I totally forgot the merchant class was even a thing. This is likely to be the parts where most players won't know what they're missing, which is a shame for a game that was otherwise great at avoiding this until now. By the way, when I created my merchant, I didn't put much thought into coming up with a decent name, so imagine my immediate regret when I found out the town that ended up being built was named after him. Moving on to the voice acting, I have an issue with it that has to do with that specific reason I alluded to earlier. The problem with these sprites is that the characters aren't expressive enough to match up with the voice acting. Some of the English voice actors put a lot of effort into the deliveries, maybe a little too much effort, because there's this awkward mismatch between the dramatic performances and the characters just standing there.
Tanaya, light of my life, is having been kidnapped by despicable scoundrels.
Because of this, I can't even tell if the voice acting is good or not. Though I do have to give a shout out to whoever voiced the King of Portuga. I was smiling the entire time this guy was talking.
Normally, I would have had him thrown out for such impudence. But his determination struck a chord deep within me.
Where the audio definitely shines, however, is the soundtrack. The orchestrated music is masterfully composed and makes everything feel so much more grand. Even when you're doing something as simple as sailing a boat, the music hits you with this. We didn't have to do all of that, I'm just holding my control stick forward. And it isn't just the quality of the music that's good, the composition of them is great. The songs that play in the towns, palaces, and especially the overworld. Also the jingle that plays when you find a useful item is the textbook definition of adorable. So many tracks have ingrained themselves into my brain, and it's not just because they play over 3 million times. For as well as the music sounds, there aren't that many songs to be found here. There is only a single battle theme for 99% of the game. Let it be known, it is an outstanding battle theme. But in other games, you're used to hearing the normal battle themes, and when you finally hear something different, you're like, oh yeah, it's going down. In Dragon Quest III, you run into a boss fight, and the battle's just not as impactful as it could be when it shares the same battle music as these guys. But don't worry, because a new battle theme finally plays once you reach Baramos. After 27 hours, what were they thinking? This is a case of a remake staying faithful to the original, for better or worse. You stay true to the original soundtrack and you have bums like me complaining there's not enough variety. If they were to include new music, people might be upset it wasn't the Dragon Quest III they were used to and preferred the soundtrack how it previously was. But hey, despite me just complaining about this, I'd still much prefer a handful of memorable songs over 200 tracks that I end up forgetting most of. And speaking of which, now it's time for my favorite part of the video, or as I like to call it, minor annoyances that don't really matter but I'm still gonna complain about because I'm petty. Switching between walking on foot and your ship has the music constantly restart from the beginning, instead of simply pausing and resuming, which seems like such an obvious solution. In a lot of cutscenes it feels inconsistent as to when I'm supposed to press a button to proceed or if it plays out automatically, and it makes me feel stupid. When you start a new game, the selected option in battles doesn't let you issue commands to your party members. Instead, they will decide what to do automatically by default, which is really weird. And last but not least, they got rid of the subtitle for the game. It used to be the Seeds of Salvation. They even name dropped the subtitle around the end of the game, and I only thought it was cool because I just so happened to know what it was referencing. I imagine most new players are gonna have no idea what it means, and that's lame. I understand that Dragon Quest III, the Seeds of Salvation HD-2D remake would have been a mouthful and a half, but this is the same series home to Dragon Quest XI's Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition, so unfortunately I cannot recommend this release due to this critical inconsistency. Apparently there's a pretty substantial post-game with brand new dungeons and boss fights, but I haven't actually managed to see most of it, because the first enemies I ran into there were 2 mini bear mosses, and I've never fast traveled out of an area so quickly in my life. The $60 price tag might push people away from trying this one. However, it looks beautiful, has finely crafted gameplay, and the orchestrated music, while can get repetitive, is of exquisitely high quality. 35 hours for the main story alone is nothing to scoff at, but also accounting for the side content, post-game, and great replayability, with multiple playstyles to experiment with and a higher difficulty level. I can't speak for everyone, including those that have played Dragon Quest III before, but I felt like it was worth it. Back when the release date for this was finally announced, I expressed interest in this being my first Dragon Quest, and it's kinda insane how quality of an experience it was considering at its core, This is basically an NES game. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with this, and will most definitely be checking out the 1 and 2 remakes as well. But now, it's time for the most important part of the video, potentially my YouTube career as a whole. I bring to you, the Dragon Quest III Slime Ranking. Last place, Man of War. Unbelievably obnoxious enemy. Getting hit by paralysis is capital M miserable. 9th place are She Slimes. These show up way late in the game and I was expecting some crazy surprise, but there's barely anything unique about them at all. What a disappointment. Number 8 are Heal Slimes. I know it's in the name, but all it does is heal and it's annoying. Why couldn't you be, I don't know, an attack slime instead? Coming in at 7th are Cure Slimes. Same as Heal Slimes, but they're red, so I guess that makes them a little more tolerable. 6th place are Bubble Slimes. A decent first variation of the slime family, but for some reason I forgot they existed and almost didn't put them on the ranking. Number 5, Shell Slime. I like these guys, I just don't like the colors as much as. Number 4, Sea Slime. Also annoying because their high defense and healing can have battles take approximately a decade, but I can't deny both the name and design are really cute. 3rd place, Metal Slime. Always exciting running into these guys, and even more exciting trying to take them out before they run away, knowing they'll drop a ton of XP if you're successful. Number 2, Liquid Metal Slime. Same points as the last entry, but I especially love the design. Also, what happened to these guys? Are they the same as Metal Slimes, but were melted by a fire spell or something? And at number 1, we have the original slime. The perfect representative of not only the slime family, but Dragon Quest III as a whole. It doesn't do anything too special, and may be a little on the basic side, but its simplicity is its greatest strength, resulting in being universally appreciated and respected by everyone that knows about it. Also, because it's the only enemy I can beat on hard mode.